Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and today I want to review the new posters for Star Trek Picard, which is a show I am looking forward to. I am cautiously optimistic. I really hope it will be good. I really want to love that show. So this video will be my analysis of the recent posters, all the information we have about the show, and my speculations, my hopes, my theories about the show. And as I said many times, I am optimistic about the show because even if it will be bad, I'm sure we'll be able to salvage something good out of it. So maybe with fan editing, we'll take out any silly moments, we might reconstruct some of it, and we can get something out of it, I'm sure. And I know it's made by the same producers, some of the same writers as Star Trek Discovery, which had a lot of problems, and that makes a lot of people very worried. But I always said that not all of Discovery was terrible. It did have some bits which were actually good in that show. For example, the character of Captain Pike in season 2 was actually well done. The only flaw he had was that he was kind of too much of a softie. Whenever anyone questions his commands, he didn't really maintain discipline. So he was kind of weak in that regard, but other than that, they made him seem like an actual Starfleet officer. He has very high morals, he cares about people, he cares about morality. So in short, Discovery did have some bits and pieces which were actually good. It was mostly bad, it had a lot of stupid things, illogical writing, but it also did have some bits which were actually clever. That's why I don't totally hate all of Discovery. So that's why I'm not totally terrified of the same producers and the same writers working on Picard. I think they said that they will do it in a different kind of style, and so hopefully they'll get rid of that dark tone of Discovery. Hopefully they won't oversaturate the screen with lens flares and shaky cam and all that stuff. Patrick Stewart coming back is already a huge win, but the only thing that worries me about that is that maybe he has too much power as an actor, and maybe they will be doing a lot of things that he wanted personally as an actor, which were not necessarily the best thing for the character. And we have an example of that in the movies, because in the movies he wanted to be more of an action hero, so they gave him all kinds of scenes turning Picard into a Rambo type of character, which doesn't really fit his character. And that dune buggy scene in Nemesis, that was Patrick's idea, because he loves to drive in dune buggies, and so they wrote that scene for him, even though it doesn't really make sense in the movie. But that's not something that really ruined the movie. The movie was ruined because of bad writing overall, but that particular scene could have been okay. Like, I didn't feel like it destroys the character or something. It felt a little bit strange, but on the other hand, it gives some variety to the character, and if it's part of a comedy, then it might be good. I actually liked all the scenes in the Insurrection, in which Picard was suddenly dancing and stuff. That was funny because it was so unlike him, because it was so surprising. That made it funny, and so that kind of humor worked for me personally. And so that's why I don't necessarily think something unusual for the character that we're not used to must be terrible. It might actually be a good thing if done right. And another thing people are worried about is that they'll basically be doing like The Last Jedi, of Picard being a depressed guy who ran away. So people compare it to The Last Jedi. As I said before, the problem with The Last Jedi is that Luke was that way all throughout the movie except the last 5 minutes, and then he just dies, and so he never really accomplished anything big, and so that was the biggest disappointment. If he had more movies later in which he became the epic Skywalker that everybody wanted to see, then that first movie of him being depressed and all of that would have been okay. So I presume that in the Picard TV show, he will not be depressed and all of that all the way through all the show. I don't believe that, and so maybe he will be that way in the first few episodes, but later he will become the Picard that we do know and love, and so that would be okay, maybe even good, maybe even interesting. It will add some drama if it will be like a character study with drama. If it's done right, it might be okay, it might even be good, and so that's why I am still cautiously optimistic. Now, one thing that does worry me is that everything seems to be focused solely on Picard. Like, this is supposed to be a Star Trek show, and Star Trek was always about a team effort, about going to space and stuff like that, and suddenly it seems to be all about just one character on Earth. So I hope it will only be the first episode or two. I hope it's not too long like that, because it wouldn't really feel like a Star Trek show. Star Trek should be about a team effort and exploring the universe and stuff like that. And so far it seems to be like a personal drama about one character who is depressed, and it might take a while to actually get back into space, so that might be a bit boring and wouldn't feel like Star Trek. Maybe it will be like that Star Trek episode Family, in which Picard came back to his family on Earth after the whole Borg incident, which was a pretty good episode, and it had nothing to do with space. And so if it's just 1 or 2 episodes like that, about his character back home, and only later going back into space, that would be fine. Maybe some people would be angry the first episode, oh wait, we didn't even go into space, we don't, what is this? This is not Star Trek. So these might be the reactions, but I personally would be patient to see where they go with it, and if it's done well, it might be great. So the first poster was this one, in which we see that vineyard, and it seems to form the Starfleet logo, and it says the end is only the beginning. So I guess in the first episode we'll see Picard tending to those grapevines, which is great. This is something I suggested when I first heard about a possible Picard show. I said the first scene should be him tending to those grapevines, because that's the scene we saw in the last episode of TNG. We saw him in the future doing exactly that, so it would tie nicely with that. I just hope they won't spend too much time there, because then it won't really feel like Star Trek. And this one we see Picard looking over his vineyard with a dog, and there seems to be a giant planet in the sky, which doesn't really make sense because this is supposed to be on Earth. So why is there a giant planet in the sky? But I guess that might be Romulus. I think the plot will be in that speculation, but I think that maybe Picard feels guilty about not saving Romulus, and so that's probably the reason he left Starfleet. The teaser trailer for the show said something about him leading the biggest humanitarian armada ever, and that something happened which caused him to lose faith in Starfleet, and so that's why he quit. So I'm guessing that armada might have been sent to try to save the Romulans, maybe to evacuate them and take them into Federation space, and maybe Starfleet gave him an order not to do that. They told him not to save the Romulans, and he obeyed, and he feels guilty about that, because he knows he could have disobeyed that order and saved millions or even billions of Romulans, but he chose duty, he chose to listen to the orders, and most of the Romulans died, and so he feels guilty, and so that planet in the sky might kind of symbolize his guilt, so I'm fine with that. And by the way, this poster kind of looks similar to the cover of a science fiction book called The Sirens of Titan, because you also see a man with a dog and a giant planet in the sky, which I guess is Saturn. I never actually read that book, so this might be a total coincidence, or maybe not, because recently CBS have been notorious for ripping off a lot of stuff from other places, so maybe it's not a coincidence. Either way, I think the similarity is superficial, so I wouldn't say it's a ripoff, I wouldn't say this is plagiarism. And about Picard having a dog, the first time I saw this poster, it did look a little bit odd to me. For a moment I thought this is fan-made poster, it looked kind of funny. Picard with a dog seemed kind of strange, because he was never really a dog person, he never had a dog. He did have a fish in his ready room, and he liked horses, he loved riding on horses, so we can say that he always loved animals, but he never actually had a dog. And also it's funny because I think I saw a video with Patrick Stewart with exactly the same kind of dog in his house, I think, so he had the exact same kind of dog, so I was wondering, is this his actual real-life dog that he asked to be put into the plot of the show? So this might be another example of the actor having too much influence. So because Patrick loves this type of dog, so he asked that kind of dog to be put into the show, to be his pet in the show, which is, again, not necessarily a bad idea, but it seems like a little bit off. Like, it would make more sense to see him with a horse standing there, because he always loved horses. It would kind of fit his character better, because seeing him now suddenly with a dog seems just a little bit off. And also this dog has clipped ears, and so that begs the question, would they still be doing that in the future, in which they have a lot more respect for animal rights and stuff like that? It's been mentioned in a lot of episodes of Star Trek. One time Riker said that they no longer enslave animals, even though Picard did have a fish, but a fish is not the same thing as a dog, so having a dog by itself is okay. I think Janeway also had a dog in the first episode, but you can see this dog has a collar, he has clipped ears, and so it's like today's dog, and so that also seems just a little bit odd. And all these posters so far have only been focused on Picard, so we don't really know anything else about the show. Will any of the other Star Trek actors appear? Will any of the TNG cast appear? I think that's a very important question. I think some of them simply have to appear, at least for a cameo, otherwise it will feel kind of empty. It will feel like a missed opportunity if none of them show up. And so this is something that makes me a little bit worried, because so far it seems to be so heavily focused only on Picard. And as I said, Star Trek was always a team effort. It was always about a crew of people, a group of people doing things together and going out into space and exploring the unknown, and this show doesn't really seem to be about that. It seems to be about a one-man journey and some kind of depression he will have to overcome, some kind of mistake he did, which I guess he will want to correct. Maybe he'll want to somehow go back in time and prevent the destruction of Romulus, which might be an interesting idea. It will also kind of explain why the JJ movies never happened. If he actually succeeds in doing that, then technically that should erase the JJ timeline, because if Romulus was never destroyed, then Spock and Nero never went back in time, so that would kind of be a neat way to explain away that whole alternate timeline thing. So I'm guessing the show will be about him gathering a team of people to take them into space to do something, maybe to find some kind of artifact and then to travel back in time to save Romulus, something like that. If I was writing the show, I would tie that with that crystal thing that he found on Risa. Remember that episode, Captain's Holiday, in which time-traveling aliens from the future came back to try to steal a device which Picard found on Risa, and they said that device is capable of stopping all nuclear activities inside the sun, something like that. So wouldn't that device be able to stop a supernova as well? So that might be neat to tie something to an episode of TNG and to do kind of a sequel to an idea that was in an episode. That's what I would be doing if I was writing the show. I would be tying up all kinds of loose ends from TNG. We'd do an episode about Worf and Alexander fighting over control of the Klingon Empire, which is something that Alexander told in that episode in which an older Alexander came back from the future, in which Worf died, killed by the Dura. So that can be a neat, epic episode about the Klingons. There's so much potential in the show, so my biggest fear is that they will totally miss all these opportunities, that they will simply do a story about one man and his guilt and all that stuff, and not really do anything with the whole galaxy of Star Trek. So that's kind of my biggest fear, the missed opportunity. That's always what I find most annoying. Like in Star Trek Discovery, there were a lot of opportunities to do a lot of cool stuff and to explain a lot of stuff which they totally missed, and they did everything a stupid way, and that was the most annoying thing to me. I could live with the visual style and all that crap that I didn't like, but I could live with that if the actual writing was good. And so that's my fear for Picard. It might be visually stunning, it might have some good moments, but if they will miss a lot of good opportunities, then that will probably piss me off. But I'm still cautiously optimistic. I'm holding my fingers. I really hope the show will be good. And even if not, then we will take all the best bits and we'll do a fan edit or parodies, so it will still have some fun elements, I'm sure. So I'm still optimistic, and this poster is a bit odd, but it does have some clues of something which might be interesting. So that's my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below and we can discuss it, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.